So, once again, welcome and thanks so much for coming. I hope that you had a chance to visit my website and learn a little bit more about myself because I'm not going to talk about myself because you did not come today to hear my story and hear how that I'm the best thing since sliced bread, which I am. But anyway, um, I promise you that our time together will be invaluable and you'll walk away with lots of golden nuggets that you can implement right away. So let's take a moment, maybe if you want, close your eyes. Imagine having an extra hour or two a day. What would that do for you? Also, imagine a feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction at the end of the day, knowing that everything that you needed to get done really did get done. What would that do for you? How would that make you feel? Well, let's start with clarity, which is actually the most important concept in personal productivity. Let me explain a little bit more and go into that. This is the number one way to get more done faster. The greater your clarity, the easier it is to complete a task. As throughout the conversation, you will see me or hear me quote my mentor, Brian Tracy, on the screen. You also see that I was certified by Brian Tracy, and that's a little icon in the bottom left of the slide as a time management master. He says the key principle of life and productivity is that you become what you think about most of the time. And that's why successful people always think about their goals. Next slide, please. You are, I'm sure, familiar with the whole idea of goal setting. That's you do that as a business owner, but you may not know that only 3% of people have written goals. Okay. All successful people have written goals and they look at them at least weekly. So, where do you fall? Are you part of the 3%? I'm not talking about looking at them weekly, but about the written goals. Now, one of the things that sets me apart from most business coaches is that I focus on six categories. I'd love to take a holistic approach to my coaching. And those six, they're part of my name. The business name is Balance Six, or time and money, of course, but they also include health, relationship, self improvement, and higher power or spirituality. When we balance those six, then we are at our best. Business and life are intimately, intrinsically interconnected. They cannot be separated, in my opinion. So here we go. We start setting goals in these six categories, and they should be SMART goals. Most of you have probably heard of that before. SMART stands for specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, time bound. You may have heard different definitions, but that's one of them. Then you need to develop strategies, that is, what, and tactics, how. Who is to do it? Do it yourself or get somebody else to do it for you. Get help doing it or don't do it at all. And we'll talk a little bit about that part. So let's look at the six. There's money. What would you like your net worth to be? Your income, your investments, charitable contributions, the business you want to have. Then we get to time, work life balance. What kind of vacations would you like to take? I know we're kind of limited right now with vacations where we actually can go somewhere, but still, time off and vacations is a big component. The idea of office hours. And let me tell you a little story about the idea of office hours. There's a young woman, single mom, four kids. She wanted to launch her real estate business. And she was working insane hours all the time on the phone, always available. And she was just frantic. So she came to me and we started working together. And so after a while, I tried to gently introduce the idea of office hours. She said, "Oh, you don't understand my industry." And I said, "You're correct. I'm not a realtor. I don't know that. But I can tell you one thing. Your four kids will resent you if they don't see you at all, or if you're not present for them. Now, a few years later, she's running a very, very successful real estate business, has about six team members on her team, multi-million dollar operation. And just a couple of months ago, she called me and said, that idea of the office hours is one of the most precious and most important things I've ever learned from you. Right now, it's clearly communicated in her email signature and on her outgoing voicemail message. I like to use stories to illustrate my points so that it doesn't sound like I'm just reciting a whole bunch of facts and information for you. Um, in the same category of time management, what time are you leaving work? For instance, no email after 6. Don't bring work home. We'll talk a little bit about that story later. Health. How much do you want to weigh? What energy level would you like to have? Emotional level, body fat level. What kind of exercise are you doing? Dieting, food supplements, sleep. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Um, so, for instance, if you want to use the SMART goal approach, if you are interested in weight loss, you can't just say, I want to lose weight, because you can go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow morning and you lost a few ounces. Bingo, you got the goal achieved. But if you wanted to turn it into a SMART goal, it could be something like, I want to lose 20 pounds so I can fit in my smoking hot red dress for my sister's wedding by July 31st of 2021. Boom. All of a sudden, this goal becomes a whole, if you know, a whole new reality. Okay, it's very clear, and it's also the why is included in it. The relationship that could be with yourself, the self-respect, with your significant other, with your kids, with relatives, business associates, friends. And if you're in a committed relationship, the idea of a date night. Well, let me share a personal story with you here. The whole idea of date night. My wife and I were always working full time, and we have three kids, all 20 months apart. So that was just insane. And we felt guilty about coming home and then leaving again with the kids with a babysitter. So, but we knew we had to get a break. So one day we got a babysitter, and as we were pulling out of the driveway, the kids were standing at the top of the driveway with the babysitter, and they were chanting, "Party, party." And my wife and I looked at each other and like, what the heck is wrong with this picture? Okay, they're throwing a party and we're pulling out of the driveway. Hmm. Well, life is different with a babysitter and with the parents. Okay. So, no, it does not hurt the kids if we leave for a couple hours or a little bit longer. It actually is what they deserve because when we come back, we are recharged and we can be the parents again that they deserve. Kids observe how you parent, and if the image of a parent is stressed out, short tempered, never available, etc., well, that's what they learn. And when later on, when they have kids, they parent the same way. So we need to with lead with an example. Okay. Higher power. If you believe in a God or a higher power or have religious beliefs, what are you doing to nurture that self of you? You know, you set time aside for it. Self improvement. We talked about that a little bit earlier. What do I do for my personal development? Continuing education. Just 30 minutes a day can make a huge difference. 180 hours a year, that's what, I don't know how many college credits that is. What old habits do I need to forget, replace? And what new habits do I need to develop? Okay. So these are just a few things that I want to talk about, in the whole idea of goal setting. So what's next? If we want to set and achieve our goals, we have to, again, we go back to clarity. We have to decide exactly what it is I want. Do you know that? Exactly. As I have conversations with my clients quite often, when I ask them, where do you want to be in a year or two? They're not quite sure. And then we get to the next spot, number where I talk about, writing those goals down. Do you have written goals? Are they in writing? Do you have deadlines for your goals? Next, fourth, you want to list every single step that you have to take to reach your goals. Then that list needs to be turned into a plan and then take action right away, not tomorrow, because that's procrastination, and that's not the kind of procrastination you want to practice. Um, and sometimes tomorrow may not come. So decide to do something every single day towards your goals and celebrate the little baby steps that you're taking. Okay? Next slide, please. Now we have to create an action plan. We have to develop a weekly and daily routine. And in that, we have to include self care. One of my favorite clients calls it her Zen time. The consequences of not doing that are destructive. Okay? This is when we talk about it, and she said, I didn't do it this week, or I didn't do it every day. I just skipped on it, and I felt it the next day. I was not the person I was meant to be. I was not the business person I meant to be, and I was short tempered with my spouse. Okay, so that is really key. Self care is not an afterthought. It has to be as important as a client appointment. So create a schedule for every day of the week. And then the whole idea of prioritizing, and we're going to go into that a little bit more detail. But the three questions that you want to ask for your maximum productivity are: one, what are your highest value activities? Two, what can you and only you do that if it's done well will make a difference? And three, what's the most valuable use of your time right now? Also, you have to take care of your schedule. Once you create that schedule, you got to stick with it. There's sometimes when you can deviate from it, but generally speaking, I highly recommend you don't do that. Next slide, please. Here we talk about this is Brian Tracy's method of prioritizing. Okay. A tasks are the ones that are absolutely critical and you must do today. They're not optional, they're not negotiable, they have to get done. B tasks, those are the ones you should be done today. Key here, what's in red. Okay, never ever do a B task before an A task. C is the task that would be nice to do today. So you see how that's pretty low. And if you have time to actually do the C tasks, then you shouldn't have any problems getting all your stuff done. I want to spend a little bit of time on D and E. Okay. The delegating part, I just had a conversation a couple of times today with clients on exactly that. It's hard for them to let go. And I'm using another story to illustrate my point here. So this dentist came to me because his wife was getting really upset with him for bringing work home. Now you would think a dentist bringing work home, how on earth is that possible? He's bringing somebody else's teeth home. No, he's not. He's doing other people's work. So after a while, realizing and accepting the fact that he was a micromanager, he learned to let go and had his staff do the work that they were hired for so that he could focus on the things only he could do as the dentist, which is what he studied. That's what he learned in dental school, is to fix teeth. In the process, not only did he have a happy home life, he was able to add about 7 to 10 new patients to his practice. So delegating is absolutely key. We talked about it a little bit before that. What is it that can be done by only you? That's what you want to focus on. Everything else should be delegated. To give another example, for instance, you think you want to do your own books. Oh, I can do it better. Oh, I can whatever it is. Usually, as a business owner, that's not our forte unless you're an accountant, but most of us are not. So when we try to do that, we usually procrastinate on it. That's why everybody, goes to the CPA, on April 14th. Hey, can you please do my taxes? Uh, Not a good idea. But not only are we procrastinating, we probably don't do a very good job. So that two things happen here. Let's say your hourly rate is $200, 300, whatever it is, and you could probably hire a really good bookkeeper for about 30, 40, $50 an hour. Now that person is an expert at doing books, so it probably takes that person a fraction of the time would take me to do the books. So not only do I save time and money, I also save time because if the books are done by somebody else, that frees me up to do the things that only I can do. Okay, the things that only I can do wouldn't get done if I dabbled in doing my books. Okay, so again, this is really a key component is to delegate and have everything that could be done by somebody else. And then the whole idea of eliminating, when we have our to-do list and to write everything down, it's usually way too long. And there's so much stuff on it that really doesn't need to be on there. We put it on there because, well, let's see, we're entrepreneurs. We always push ourselves more, more, more. We should on ourselves. I should be doing this. I should do that. But really, is it really that important? So I did a podcast on this next thing that I want to share with you. It's called How to Plan Your Ultimate Day. So when you plan your day, what most of us do is okay, appointments with prospects, clients, or, BNI members to have one to ones. Okay. That's usually on there. But that's only one item. Let me tell you a few more that should be on there. So, what prospect do I need to call today? What appointments do I have and need to make? That's probably usually there. How will I improve my health today? Usually not there. What meals will I have and where? Not there usually. What time will I get up and go to bed? Probably not there. Maybe the getting up part. What phone calls do I need to make? What will I do for my spouse and my family? Most likely not there. What will I delegate? We just talked about that. Not sure that's there. What will I do for myself? Probably not there. And here again, I'd love to share a story with you. Most of you know that I'm Swiss. I grew up in a town called Zurich, Switzerland. Most people have heard of Carl Jung, but not of Christoph Nauer, right? Carl Jung is a well known person. He happens to had a house on the lake of Zurich. Now, I grew up in Zurich, but not on the lake. Um, One day he gets a phone call from a very influential person, and she said, I need to meet you on Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So Carl gently said, I'm sorry, I cannot meet you at that time. I already have an appointment. So she was not happy at all. But she happened to be out on the lake driving by his house on Wednesday afternoon at that particular time. And lo and behold, there Carl was sitting in his backyard, dangling his feet in the water. Now she got really outraged. When she got home, she called him up and said, How dare you? You lied to me. You didn't have an appointment. I saw you sitting in the backyard, dangling your feet in the water. Carl gently said, No, I did not lie to you. I had the most important appointment of the week, an appointment with myself. And I'd like to take that little story a step further. Let's have an appointment with ourselves, not once a week, but once a day. Okay. Um, Again, I'm trying to use this story to let you know the stuff that I'm coming up with is not something that is just that I make up in my head. This is supported by famous people like Carl Jung. Okay. The other thing too is what time will you go to bed? I had a client who talked about having a hard time because she was not getting enough sleep. So I said, well, what time should you be in bed and ready to go to sleep? And she picked a time. I don't know if it was 10 or 11. So, okay, how long does it take for you to get ready for that? Do you have like some kind of a ritual that you do every day? She said, probably half hour. So, okay. So now set your alarm for 10:30 and say, get ready for bed. Now it sounds silly, right? But the chance of her actually doing that significantly improved. By 10:30, she got a little alert. It's time for you to stop what you're doing, get ready for bed, and go to bed, get your sleep. Okay? It's simple things like that. Like my dentist told me you should floss. I hate flossing, okay? Can't stand it. I mean, you don't teach an old dog new tricks. Come on. So, but obviously she knows what she's talking about, so I should listen to her because otherwise, why would I go to a dentist, if I ignore her advice? So I use this fancy tool here and put it in there a certain time every day with a little alert to it. That sounds silly, right? Floss. So the same time every day that little thing goes off, bing. If I sit at my computer, it shows up on my computer. Floss. Now, am I doing it every day? No. But am I doing it more often? Yes. Okay. So that's just to tell the story because I remember when I went back after a while and she was like, wow, this is incredible. What are you doing? So I told her the story and she was just cracking up. You know. So next slide, please. So here is a steps for you to really double your productivity. I know those of you who are in my BNI chapter, you've heard me say this before. Those of you who have one-to-ones with me hear me say, "Oh, I help business owners double their productivity and time off." Well, this is where the rubber hits the road. List all time commitments, everything. And please, in writing. If it's not in writing, it does not exist. It's not committed. Okay? If it's just floating around in your head, it does not exist. And then you probably have a huge list of all the things you think you need to do. Okay? And then that's where we go to the E and the D and the E in our prioritizing that we just talked about. And that alone, should really limit your to-do list significantly. Okay. So what can you eliminate? What can you delegate? The husband of a client said to her, honey, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen if you didn't do X? You fill in the blank. Somebody gonna die? The world gonna end? The house gonna collapse? And so that's kind of sometimes a good question to ask when we should on ourselves. I should be doing this. I got to do this. I got to do that. You know, if I don't do it, what would happen? Okay, so after you the prioritizing, whatever method you want to use, if you want to use the ABCDE method, that's a great one. You can use another one. That's perfectly fine. Next, you have to assign a time to each task. And listen, Murphy's Law says it always takes longer than you think. Okay, I had this conversation earlier with a client today exactly about that. I say, okay. And she said, yep, yep, I know. I've fallen into that trap many times before. So give it more time than you think. It's easier that way because if you have extra time to finish it, it's better. It's a better feeling. If you're too short, you get stressed out. And stress, as we all know, has horrible consequences. Once you have done that, then it's a time to schedule this. Okay. So each item has to get on your schedule. And if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. I said that earlier before. What doesn't get scheduled does not get done. And I catch myself quite often, violating my own rules. And then I wonder, what the heck? Why did I not done? Well, I didn't write it down. I didn't schedule it. Simple as that. Follow your schedule. Okay, that's critical. Once you do have a schedule, that means don't give it away to others. Don't give it up for clients who are not as organized as you are. That's not your fault. You know, when the phone rings, are you jumping and answering it? Well, there's somebody who can help you with that and answer the call for you. And delegating, outsourcing. Um, but the key is really stay with the schedule. When somebody, for instance, again, this is the Carl Jung story. Okay, so he could have figured, oh yeah, this is a very important person. I can make some money if I have her, meet me at this time. I can easily do maybe my time some other time. But no, he didn't. So I suggest you do the same thing. Stick with your schedule. Let folks know when you're available and when you're not available. Don't change your schedule for somebody else. Unless, again, it's a real emergency. Complete the task that's more important than perfection. Okay, so many people are perfectionists, and so we don't even ever get the stuff done. It's never good enough. And then what then happens is it gives us a sense of, oh, I should, and it just never gets done because, okay, so don't be a perfectionist. Um, just make sure it gets done, and there's always room for correction later. You know, some of you may have read Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog. Okay, that has absolutely nothing to do with a culinary dish. Okay, this has to do with you doing the most challenging and difficult tasks first and not last. We all are very good at procrastinating on those tasks, me included. Okay, I sometimes say I have a master's degree in procrastination. But what it does is that frog then gets bigger and bigger and heavier as the time goes on. And it distracts us from doing and being present in the moment. Okay. Look back at a time when you tackled a task that was challenging and difficult and you didn't like it, but you did it anyway. How did you feel when you got it done? Right? Like $1,000,000. All of a sudden you're full of energy, you're motivated to just to go off the next thing. It changes the energy, and once he does that, everything else like a piece of cake. So, but it's not in our nature. The human nature is to procrastinate on those frogs and push it off, and at some point I get to it. What's not comfortable, we want to avoid and leave out as much as we possibly can. One of the things that could really make a huge difference is the next one, the 90-15-90. Okay. What that means is you work on something for 90 minutes without any interruptions. Then you take a 15-minute break and then do it again. Without interruption, that means, email is off, phone is off, Facebook alerts is off. Anything that could distract you, anything is off, is eliminated. Okay. That, if you do that just once a week, I promise you, it makes a humongous difference. You get so much done. The fact is, actually, if you have working on a task and you stop and go, stop, go, stop, go, it takes up to 7 times longer to complete that task. So a huge time waste. Okay. Um, so again, interruption. We talk a little bit later about the worst time wasters and the interruptions. Emails or phone are among the worst. Next slide, please. So here we talk about preparation implementation. Clean your workspace and make it comfortable. A cluttered desk slows you down. It causes distractions. You see something else on your desk, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I should do this, and boom, there you go, distracted. Okay, clear it all off, and then organize it. So anything that you need to do the task that you're working on, put it on your desk so you're ready to go. So you don't have to look for files or look for things, and then work on that one thing. I know multitasking is something that people in our society are preaching about. Nope, it's not going to do any good. It really is. It lowers your productivity significantly. Give what you do your full attention and get it done with. So again, only one task at a time. And here again, the eight tasks. Everything else has to wait. And the one thing that you've heard me say by now, self-care is an eight task. Okay, cover the clock. And I know on the computer that's a little bit more challenging. Um, we talked about distractions, phone off, exit out of email, etc. That is critical because even if you were very disciplined, if your little alert pops up that you have mail, in the olden days it says you have mail, you know, uh, that is enough for your eyes just to go to that and to can derail you. And then quite often we then want to go see what that is. Oh, that sounds interesting. And there we go down a rabbit hole. Um, Take planned breaks. Okay, for instance, that's another thing from Brian Tracy, the 28-2 method. 20 minutes of sitting, 8 minutes of standing, 2 minutes of moving around. With this new COVID environment, not so new anymore, uh, we do a lot of sitting, we do a lot of staring at screens. So it's important to get up and move about. So when you have multiple Zoom calls scheduled, you know, allow for a break in between so that you can actually get up and move about, have something to eat, something to drink, or just move and stretch. Okay. Um, Take lunch breaks, please. That I talked to you before. Eating at the desk and eating and working is not making you more productive. It's actually the exact opposite. If you take a lunch break away from your computer and workstation, you will be more productive in the afternoon than if you just sit there and eat lunch at your desk. There are a few time management truths that I want to share with you. We all have the same time, okay? We all get 24 hours a day. Nobody gets more. Um, you know what? When when you have kids and you cut a cake, they make sure everybody gets the exact same amount. No one piece is bigger than the other. Well, with time, we all get the same. It's up to us how we use it. Um, Warren Buffett says, I can buy anything I want except time. Okay. So the beauty is that time management is a learned skill. That's something you can learn. It's not something that you're born with. Most of us are not. Again, one of my clients recognized that and she brought me in to train her team on time management. One of the things that we noticed by that during that training is that each team member had different gifts and talents. The unique part in this training was that one person was an excellent lead generator, but could not close a deal. The other one was a fantastic closer, but could not generate any leads. So once we figured that out, I said to the team, hey, do you guys see potential here? Of course. Now they had to figure out the whole compensation plan because usually everybody was expected to, get their leads and close them, and then they get commission on that. So they had to figure that part out. But this way, one person goes in, gets the deals, the other goes in and closes. I mean, and yes, then that's exactly what happened. And the client was killing it after that. Time can have future value. So that's why I'm recording this training. I can make it available to folks afterwards. Okay. So for instance, if you have to train people, that why not record your training so that you don't have to do it over and over and over again with people. You would first say, okay, here, watch this video or read this book or read this manual. Once you're done with that, then we can do a Q&A to clarify things that you need to get done. Instead of every single time when you have a new person or new team member or a new employee come in, you have to sit down for 2 hours and go over the same stuff. Okay. That's what I mean by having future value. And this is where you can make the training once. Yes, it may take a little bit more time because you have to create it as a video or whatever it is. But then after that, it's done, and you can just pass it on to the next person to read. Some activities produce better results than others. That goes back to the prioritizing. Before we talked about it, how to do that. What are the best? What's the best way to spend your time? The other thing too is what you expect to happen usually tends to happen. Okay, so that's why it's so critically important to focus on the positive. Consistently think about the goals. Consistently think about the possibilities and what's possible. And see in every failure, see an opportunity because all successful people failed many, many times. They only got better and better because they always got up, learned from their mistakes, and in the mistake, they saw potential, okay, instead of adversity or defeat. So, what we focus on is what we track back into our lives. So, that is so critical. We look, the glass is half empty or half full. It's up to us to decide. You know, if we look at life and our business as a scarcity model versus an abundance model, it's up to us how we look at it, and we get more of that right back into our lives. We talked about that. What doesn't get scheduled doesn't get done. Avoiding time wasters, which is, I think, our next slide, please. And this is a book by Alec McKenzie, fantastic book called The Time Trap. He not only lists the worst time wasters, but he also has concrete suggestions on how to overcome them. Okay. So if you want to look at the list and see which ones apply to you, maybe you can make yourself a promise to work on one or the other and say, okay, I will, you know, not fall into that again. I will not give in to that. I will overcome this particular time waster. Okay. And one of them, the inability to say no, um, is a big one. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up. Next slide, please. Okay, again, write everything down. Carry a notebook or recorder. So that's, nowadays it's easier enough to do. Learn to say no. Okay, so either say no or ask for time. So when somebody wants something from us, we want to be there for them. We want to help them, right? But quite often we jump in and say yes before we have an idea of what we commit ourselves to. So one of the things to do is just say, let me check my calendar. I'd love to help you, but let me check my calendar, make sure I don't overpromise. And then I'll get back with you within 24, 48 hours, whatever it is. Uh, and then it buys you time. Then you can really look at it. What is this? What does this person want? What kind of time commitment does it take from me? And by when can I realistically deliver what that person wants? Then we can get back to them and make them a proposition and say, okay, I love to work with you. This is what I can do. I have an opening here. It's going to take me 3 days or whatever it is, instead of jumping in and taking something on that may not behoove us. Okay. We talked about taking control of our schedule, identifying bad habits and change them. We all have them. That's just the way of life, and that's the human nature. Uh, once we figure out what they are, then let's make a commitment to changing them. We talked plenty about delegating and not doing other people's work, like the dentist. That's got him in trouble. An upset wife, an unhappy home situation is not conducive to any business. Count your blessings. We briefly talked about that. Focus on the positive. I just did a short video on the power of gratitude on my YouTube channel. Never stop learning. That's why you're here today. So thank you for doing that. There's always more to learn. And then this, what you see on your screen, that's once again from my mentor and trainer, Brian Tracy. You can get your time and life under control only to the degree to which you discontinue lower value activities. Next slide, please. So, what is next? Taking action, right? Again, I invite you to ponder and imagine, like we did at the beginning, having an extra hour a day or an extra 2 hours a day. What would that do for you? Imagine a feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction at the end of the day, knowing that everything that needed to get done got done. How would you feel? What would this do for you? Well, taking action is what changes things. Okay. So after this presentation today, you have basically, you know, three options. You can implement what you learned on your own. Okay. And that works really well for very disciplined and driven and organized people. Um, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, if you do that and you walk away with some of it and implement that, that is fantastic. And that's one of my goals has been accomplished. Second, you could work with a group. And this is a deal for business owners who like group interaction, to have group in accountability and so that they hold each other accountable and work together as a group. And groups are never more than 10 people. The third option is obviously you can work with me one on one, my VIP personal one on one coaching. That'll be just you and me, and we decide on a day and time that would works for you. That's about 60 minutes um, each session. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is my gift to you for coming to my talk today. So that way we can sit down, we can have a discussion, look at which of the three options or is best suited for you. Is it best to do it yourself? Do you have maybe you already have an accountability partner that you work with and you can work together and hold each other accountable? Um, that's fantastic. That's actually another story that I forgot to tell is when years and years ago in Switzerland, I would go to the gym with a friend. That was before cell phones, okay? And when he called and canceled, guess what happened? The chance of me going by myself dropped significantly, okay? So because I'm very good at excuses, you know. Excusitis is one of those diseases a lot of us have, and I had it too. But yeah, so if you have an accountability partner that you can work with, that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, if you fall into the two or three categories, then that's a possibility too. And this is what we do here. We would together we'll look at um, what you want in your business, get clarity, where you want to be in a year or so. Then we look at what could possibly stand in your way and what can we do to overcome them and change that so that you can have the business that you really want. And that's why you got into a business for yourself to begin with. The best way to schedule such an appointment is with my calendar link. Another thing that I highly recommend all you have to set up your appointments instead of going back and forth, since it saves you a ton of time. Okay. Um, so that's how you can set up an appointment with me where we can discuss this further. Um, as I talked about it before earlier, uh, do it now while you think about it. Otherwise, what happens is out of sight, out of mind, or if you as good at procrastination as I am, then it may never happen. Um, the other thing is, I would love your feedback. So email me how I can improve my workshop. Also, let me know what you liked. I hope you did like a whole bunch of stuff as well. And then, of course, I would love you to leave 5-star reviews on Yelp and Google for me. And then we have the next and last slide, please. And now I'm going to open it up